look, we got to start with, I think, the most obvious. Can we start with Giuliani?
Oh, sure.
So Giuliani in another, this wasn't a pre-dawn raid. I don't know if CNN got the heads up to be there to record it. Was it his Washington office or Washington residence that got raided?
I thought it was his Manhattan address.
Manhattan. So his Manhattan residence raided by the FBI again, seizing hard drives, some hard drives, not all. And I made a joke that, that they didn't. Someone had asked, why didn't they seize the hard drive with some Hunter Biden material on it? And I made a joke. They didn't seize that hard drive because of the Hunter Biden material on it. Someone said, well, they're executing a warrant, so they only have certain things they're going after. I didn't respond to that response, but my understanding is if you're going after hard drives, you got to seize all of them because you don't know what's on what. It's not like there's an inventory on a hard drive. So we know that it has to do with the FARA Act. Apparently, we don't know if there's an indictment. We don't know what the charges are, but we suspect it has to do with lobbying that he did on behalf of Trump in 2019 with the Ukrainians. Do we know what this is about, really?
Well, I mean, I think Lee Smith wrote a good piece about it that I think is correct. He wrote, I think he wrote the book Plot Against the President. And basically it's payback is my view. I mean, whatever the legal pretext is, we haven't seen the search warrant affidavit, nor has Giuliani. He's only seen what they requested. They may have listed on what they gave him what crimes were being investigated, but that isn't always the case. The assumption, I believe, is that it must be the Foreign Agents Registration Act, somehow that he was working as an agent of the Ukrainian government. I mean, which makes no sense because that never happened. So it's not just if you're an agent for anybody who's overseas. I mean, the Foreign Agents Registration Act is supposed to be about representing foreign governments and just disclosing that for lobbying purposes. And what legislation was he supposed to have been working on? So, I mean, it's a ridiculous reach. No surprise, the Southern District of New York. What it looks like is simply payback. He is being punished because he exposed the corrupt family of our current president, his fraudulency II.
Well, I did hear that apparently it might have had to do with. I'm not gossiping. I read an article, and it had to do potentially with not respecting contributions to campaign. He was trying to siphon in money from the Ukraine for political action committees that would otherwise not be allowed, and that was the foreign lobbying violation, is taking foreign monies to use it to influence the elections. I mean,
that really wouldn't count. That wouldn't be under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. You could argue that, and they really wouldn't have a donation angle either. I mean, that I can see. So it's far from, I mean, it's a complete reach. It's an extraordinary legal reach. And the probabilities that he made that mistake are extraordinarily low. And so so problem one is there doesn't appear to be any criminal conduct worth investigating. Secondly, to the extent they're claiming it was FARA, it would be one of the rarest FARA prosecutions ever brought. This was all reinstated and reinvigorated by the Obama shadow government that was left over by Trump mistakenly. And so that's the second problem, would be the obvious selectivity of the prosecution. Third problem is these warrants for things like electronically stored material have been problematic for a while. And even though courts have been clear that, you have a right to go in and look for a particular thing, that really shouldn't give you the right to seize the entire computer or seize the entire phone. And you're supposed to go through these very strict protocols, especially when it involves an attorney who represents clients, because you'd be looking at attorney-client privilege materials. You're supposed to go through special protocols so they never see it, never look at it, that it's put in, they call it taint team procedures, but most of those are a crock. They really should be very independently maintained, independently reviewed, completely separated and segregated. They're abusing that as well. And this is just because they expect that the courts in New York won't meaningfully enforce the Fourth Amendment, even as to the lawyer for the ex-president, and even though he is the former United States attorney for the Southern District of New York. So it reveals the scope and scale of the problems. My guess is that they had requested this previously and that it had been turned down because the investigation purports to stem from 2019. And so it appears that, Rudy Giuliani, in trying to defend the president against the impeachment charges, was looking at the information related to corruption involving U.S. political officials, including the Biden family in Ukraine, and they're trying to say somehow it was criminal to expose the Biden family's long history of corruption. I mean, I mean, you even had the Russian officials saying that America, by its own definition, is no longer a democracy. That that they are what they're accused of with Navalny, which is really not credible allegations. We're doing times 10. If Putin was going after the lawyer for the leader of the opposition and doing mass raids on him, we would be going nuts about it. They'd be issuing sanctions tomorrow over
it. It would not even. I mean, it would be outrageous on its face. And the fact is, we haven't seen any indictment. We haven't seen,
and there couldn't be yet, because a search warrant can't be executed if there's an indictment already issued, because that's illicit use of the grand jury. So this is purely a discovery technique. But it's clear harassment on Giuliani and the president. It's also sending a message: if you expose their corruption, they'll try to put you in prison for what they did.
But hold on. So then explain which judge do they go to get a warrant, which has to be necessarily an ex parte hearing to get a warrant to seize the hard drive? These are someone asked me, and I don't think it is. It's not the FISA courts. This is a standard court.
No, this would be a United States District Court in the Southern District of New York, maybe a federal magistrate, but usually a district court judge for something like this. And it likely had to have been signed off on by someone the Republicans let breeze in to be the criminal section chief for the Department of Justice, even though she had a notorious history of these kind of matters related to and had ties to the whole Russiagate scandals. But the Republicans, being the dead weight that they are in the Senate, let her get through with ease without even meaningful interrogation through the appointment process. But because anytime you do a search warrant for electronic materials, that requires specialized approval and specialized warrants. They often breach that these days, but there should be remedy for it. The second is they have to, if it involves a high-profile political target and someone who has attorney-client materials in their file, usually has to get the criminal section chief's personal signature. So that's who, that was now, then they just go to any district court judge or magistrate. And these days, a lot of judges are just rubber stamps. You could, the government could blow a leaf across the desk of many judges and they'd sign it. I mean, it's a disgrace how judges have not become meaningful, sort of meaningfully interposed like they're supposed to be for the search warrant process.
But what is the standard threshold to get the issuance of a search warrant? I mean, what do
you have to show two things: probable cause of that this individual has committed a crime, number one. Number two, that it's kind of supposed to be the only means you get it. Like, the idea is that it's exigent. You have to do the search. You can't trust the person just to subpoena the evidence. You have to get it individually because you're worried about it being destroyed. And that's why you have to do, a tactical search warrant raid. But you're only looking for evidence. You're only supposed to get approval there's particularity as a requirement of the Fourth Amendment, that you can only get evidence that's specifically related to the probable cause for which you have an indictment. That's where the seizure of all the materials is way too broad. I'm sure the warrant probably, you never know these days, but to conform to the Constitution's requirement under existing case law, they will have to establish that they are going to have a strict procedure by which nobody that's part of the investigative team looks at any of this information until first it's screened out by an independent taint team, in which Giuliani usually has some role in that if it's done right. I mean, they increasingly violate that. But the way to think of it is it's like if you have the right to search certain files in a file cabinet, doesn't give you the right to seize the whole file cabinet. Well, but it's what they've been doing.
And now Beavis Wallace says, Giuliani said in an interview he asked the FBI to take the Hunter Biden disk drives and they refused. The warrant said take all electronic drives, but they refused Hunter Biden data. We're getting conflicting versions of that. Apparently people say that they did take all the drives, but I mean, we'll see. I had read the same thing actually, Beavis, so we'll see what turns out to be true, but this is all.
And Giuliani and his lawyer both said that. So unless, why would they lie about that? So, I mean, I don't see any reason for them to lie about that. Turley is right that you wouldn't take the person's word for what's on a particular computer file. Typically, that if it says seize all electronic files within, now that's, in my view, that's an overbroad warrant out of the gate. Presumably, they were authorized to seize it, but not look at it until somebody else looks at it. But assuming that protocol is in place, they should seize everything. They shouldn't refuse to seize the Hunter Biden evidence. It's a sign of how overtly political the case is, that they didn't even follow their own search warrant directions because they don't want to say they have the Hunter Biden files in their custody or possession, apparently.
And now, so 63 Ramblers asks, can Rudy now force the contents of the entire Hunter thumb drive into the public record as his case plays out? Can he force any of this into the public record? I mean, I suspect.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no limits on him. But like sometimes the government will lie to people and say, hey, if you're a witness in front of the grand jury, remember there's grand jury secrecy. Grand jury secrecy doesn't apply to the witness. Grand jury secrecy only applies to the grand jurors, the prosecutors, and the investigators, for which they have no problem leaking anyway. But putting that aside, it doesn't apply to a witness. It never does. But they try to trick people into believing
that. I don't know if this person is being ironic. I will take this as irony. I don't know that I ever was relevant, incidentally, but the issues are relevant. So they seize all this stuff. Standard protocol. Do they have to mirror it and give a copyright back to Giuliani? Does he have any control?
Yes. And frankly, they should do that at the scene. I mean, they've been getting sloppy now for years. The protocol, my view is the protocol is that it should be more restrictive than it is right now anyway. But even under the existing protocol, what you're supposed to do is you're not supposed to seize it. You're supposed to bring the tech people with you to mirror it and leave everything there. And then you're supposed to make sure those mirrored drives, nobody looks at them until it goes through an independent team that has nothing to do with the investigation. Now, these taint team procedures have been a joke because they leak like a sieve anyway. And in my view, it's still a Fourth Amendment violation because you seized information you weren't entitled to look at in the first place. And that includes a magistrate. That includes any investigator, prosecutorial team, anybody who, even regardless of other part of the prosecution, the government agents looking at stuff they ain't got no right to.
Well, so that's going to be the bigger question: is what's going to be the fruits? What is it? The fruits of the poisonous tree, or the poison fruits? What I mean, is this going to be a case of them? Oh well, we didn't get him on the FARA, but look, we found tax evasion and all some other stuff, or even
they can't look at that. And if they do, it's a major Fourth Amendment violation. So they can only look at what's relevant to the issues under investigation, no further. And if there's attorney-client privilege materials, they have to go back in front of the judge to request that materials, and before they can ever look at anything related to it. So now the problem you have here is you have politically motivated courts in the Southern District of New York that aren't meaningfully scrutinizing is it a coincidence that all these cases keep happening in the Southern District of New York?
No,
the Wall case, the meme case, all defendants that weren't even there. At least Giuliani's in the Southern District of New York. So, but I mean, it's not a coincidence that these extreme abuses are happening with the most politicized department of the entire United States government in the criminal justice arena.
And Bob Whittlefish says, HB emails are online for download unredacted. See your locals board for comments on this. I haven't seen the comments, but I do understand that there's some stuff that's been available.
Oh yeah, a bunch of people have mirrored it and put it out in the public domain. And he's referencing the locals board. He's probably referencing Viva Barnes Law. We're
going to need like a little counter in the back, and it's going to go bing every time you. In fact, I need to let you do a clean one so I can use it for every video. Okay, I mean, so what are the next steps with this? Is there a time frame within which, upon seizure, they have to file charges, or
no? But he can request a return of any seized materials if they haven't done so within a particular time frame. He can bring a Bivens action if he believes that the search warrant is overbroad, either in its actual authorization or in the execution thereof. So he can do either one of those things. So he has certain remedies at this stage of the action. What he did is I think, wisely went to the court of public opinion and pointed out what was happening and how it was happening and the problems related to it. He said the FBI agents that were at the scene were very professional. But obviously the people behind the scenes are the problem.
Oh no, they might be professional, and that's why these things are happening. I mean, it's the weaponizing of everything. I say if someone's guilty of something, they should be found. They should go through a trial, and justice should play out. If they don't get convicted, you don't get to say, well, they're guilty anyhow. If they get convicted and it was an unfair trial, there's issues, and everyone is presumed innocent. I'm not trying to say that guilty people should not be punished. What we're seeing is outlandishly weaponized prosecution of political adversaries. You have literally, they're seizing stuff on Giuliani that ostensibly relates exactly to what the Bidens actually did. You have this going on while Hunter Biden is getting book advances and speaking gigs on fake news at universities, despite admissions of having committed felonies. It's like one person one person's criminal history is the story of their vindication if they're political allies, and one person's criminal history is going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law if they're political adversaries. And the January 6th riots versus the Summer of Love is the other perfect example. It's one law, two systems. And anyway, so we'll see. Do we expect to hear anything from Giuliani or from the SDNY? Does it if it proceeds to charges?
I mean, they can do something. I think what they're also trying to do is they're trying to track the trail by which Giuliani got some information. They want to know every source he had for exposing the existing president's corruption. I mean, this is, the degree to which Biden appointees appear to be directly involved in this. This is an actual impeachable offense, as opposed to the nonsense they brought up against Trump, because this appears to be weaponizing the Justice Department to cover up the corruption of the Biden family and punish anyone who has helped expose that, including not only Giuliani, but anybody that Giuliani was talking to. They appear to be looking for the sources of information that Giuliani received.
I hope someone's listening, because not that the impeachment process should be used willy-nilly like twice in one presidency. The idea that if there is political influence, political pressure to actually use the FBI to sanction, punish, deter as a reprisal against ideological adversaries who expose the current government's corruption, I don't know what more of an abuse of power one can have than that.
What people forget is Giuliani isn't just the lawyer for the ex-president. He was the conduit for a bunch of whistleblowers. And that appears to be what they're looking for. They're looking for who the whistleblowers were, who the different people were. Everybody knows about the laptop guy, but my guess is they're looking for everybody he talked to try to clean things up. I mean, this is while they're also trying to lobby for war in Ukraine. So, I mean, there's sort of a correlation going on. And what's happening in Ukraine, a lot of the corrupt oligarchs there are in political trouble, and the current president is Zelensky's in political trouble. That's why that they were trying to, provoke another war there. And it's the same State Department people are now back in charge who created the first coup in Ukraine that created the debacle in 2014 in the Maidan Revolution. So I think it's all interrelated, and it's just an extraordinary. I don't know if from a federal criminal process we've ever seen this degree of political weaponization of the Justice Department in our history.
And not asking for legal advice, but how do we fight this? I mean, where does it go, Robert? We've been, we have been keeping, or at least trying to keep people optimistic. It seems to be getting more and more egregious, more and more in your face, and less hidden, less concealed.
Well, this is the same week that it came out that the FBI was routinely abusing FISA information to spy on political adversaries for the last 3 years. And the FISA court said, okay, the FBI said, well, they'll never, ever do it again. So that's enough. It shows what a crock the FISA court has become. I think that fighting it out in the court of public opinion is a critical means of resistance, exposing it for what it is, as well as finding legal political remedies where they exist, I think is the other component of it. I think where Michael Malice is right, while he always argues that it's a white pill world and white pill universe, is, though he was slandering lawyers this past weekend, Michael, was that is the fact that the regime wouldn't be resorting to these extreme remedies, these open, overt remedies, if they were truly confident in their position of power.